What's up, y'all? Today we're talking about climate change. So obviously Rolling Stone has all the answers about climate change, and if you happen to disagree, it's probably because you're an alt-right troll. So here's the valiant, brave protesters. So before we start, I just want to say, this is not a debunking climate change. This is not a flat earth video, nothing like that. I am, in fact, a believer in climate change, if you can believe in such a thing. But typically you have news outlets, such as the Rolling Stone, spinning this issue into a divisive, partisan kind of thing. I don't really think that's the right way to frame this. And now we have the scary, spooky rhetoric starting. It's not easy to feel hopeful at this dark hour. The Amazon rainforest is burning, which has nothing to do with climate change, by the way. You can go research that. Heat waves this summer have killed thousands of people. The Midwest is still reeling from massive flooding. I thought the flooding was supposed to be of the coastal regions. Why is the Midwest flooding? That's weird. And the human suffering from Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas is just beginning to be revealed. Meanwhile, Trump doodles on hurricane maps. Oh, he's such a silly guy, he's doodling. He's investing millions in fossil fuel infrastructure. So climate scientists tell us that the nations of the world need to cut pollution in half by 2030. To avert the worst impacts of the climate crisis. So what are those impacts? Well, they don't really say here. Fortunately, we have a savior. We have a messiah who's been given to us by God. Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old Swedish climate activist, has become a media star. Inspired by Thunberg, tens of thousands of people will participate in a global climate strike to demand action. And of course, there's the Green New Deal, which has emerged as one of the hottest political topics of the moment. No pun intended. The climate fight is gaining momentum and becoming the driving political movement of our time, thanks to Greta Thunberg just giving us that moral courage. She speaks not just for her generation, but for everyone whose future has been trashed by greed and carelessness. There's so much colorful language here. It's like they're making it into some sort of comic book superhero battle of some sort. This little 16-year-old girl is the genius that we all need to aspire to be like. I mean, it seems to me she's not really filling people with moral courage. She's filling people with fear and anxiety. And so I guess they want to destroy one of the largest industries and components to our economy. And what are they going to replace it with? Well, we have no idea, and we're not going to find out by reading this article, that's for sure. So you see, we need to speak out in blunt ways about climate risks. Well, that's what I'm trying to do here. I like to keep it pretty blunt and straight to the point. And thanks so much to these Democratic candidates. They released such an ambitious climate plan. It's so good. And 2 sentences later, then they're talking about the Green New Deal. So the amazing, ambitious climate plan that was so good is not the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal, which is not actually a policy proposal, just a 14-page long congressional resolution, and very little of it has to do with climate change anyway. You can go read it for yourself. Next, we have the college campuses, which in the US are known as bastions of free thought and challenging alternative ideas. The Green New Deal has gone viral, transforming depressing lectures about the climate crisis into inspiring debates about race, power, and environmental justice. And here's where I think you lose most people, because most sane people would say, the scientists are telling us that humans are contributing to these negative effects on our climate. Sure, let's get together and, put some funding aside and invest in some solutions. And then you start talking about race. What is power? What do you mean by that? Environmental justice? You're trying to throw too many eggs into this basket, and what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a bunch of yolk all over your face. They're trying to build the climate equivalent of the civil rights movement. It's about articulating the dream of a better world, one without fossil fuels. Those evil, terrible fossil fuels that everybody uses every single day, and which powers a lot of the green alternative energy solutions anyway. But fortunately, we have financial panic. Taking climate change seriously has always meant ditching fossil fuels as quickly as possible. Obviously, that hasn't happened. By the way, this is not true. There are new, more advanced ways of extracting fossil fuels. But sadly, the Rolling Stone has to be honest here. If you think honestly about it, the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era is nigh. So we're about, what, halfway, two-thirds through this article, and already the Rolling Stone has omitted so much information that they had an opportunity to actually bring up. They had an opportunity to address a lot of the denial and a lot of the arguments against the whole, abolishing fossil fuels thing. They could be dealing with the arguments that people are actually making, but they're not. Instead, we get this partisanship and we get this sort of one-sided narrative that's designed to just make it so simple that you would have to be an idiot to disagree. So leave it up to the Rolling Stone to convince another couple of people here. So this is about a fight, and I think this is kind of insinuating, oh, we're just not fighting hard enough. If we just come together and just fight a little bit more, then we can fix the planet Earth, which is, a bajillion times larger and more unpredictable than we could even fathom. But if we just get together and fight, we're going to be able to control it, because the human brain, just the imagination and just the dreams and, meteorologists don't even know what temperature it's going to be tomorrow. We don't even know if it's going to rain or if it's going to be sunny. But we just need to keep fighting so that we can control all of these things with our imagination. What's the title of this article again? It's The Climate Crisis and the Case for Hope. So you see, you just need to hope a little bit more, and we wouldn't have any of these problems. So first, a couple of the things that the Rolling Stone has left out of their brilliant treatise on climate science. There's all kinds of crazy things that affect the climate that nobody is talking about here. This is not a, do you believe in the tooth fairy type of issue. This is a lot of different factors here. Explosive volcanoes are always changing the sea level pressures, the changes in Indian summer monsoons. So I have this kind of vision of, okay, we've passed all of the climate change. We've passed the Green New Deal. We do everything that the Democratic Party wants us to do. And is it really going to change anything, because we haven't addressed any of this other stuff? So let's look at the best possible solutions for addressing climate change. And as far as I can see, Rolling Stone only mentioned like maybe 2 or 3 of these. So there's clean energy programs, there's commercial building integration, clean cities, aircraft fuel efficiency, biomass and biorefinery systems. You have all of this: conservation, healthy forest initiative, forest land enhancement. So it's not like nobody's doing anything about this. If you're doubting that this is an issue at all, we have this beautiful graph here to convince you. Here's the greenhouse effect of solar radiation. So as you can see, these aliens in our atmosphere are sending out heat waves and trying to destroy us all. There's an argument that if more people went vegan or vegetarian, that would help reduce the climate crisis. And this seems to be true. So this is in the production of these sources. So it has nothing to do with what you eat. It has to do with the industry and how they create these products. But just looking at a graph and saying, oh, meat is emitting a lot of greenhouse gas, so let's just not eat it, you might find out that there are some other unintended consequences to that solution. So here's probably the most important chart in this entire video, right here. All of these United States policies and, Democrat politicians are solving the issue, and meanwhile, the US is only really contributing to about 15% or so of carbon dioxide emissions. So that means there's another 85% of the world which they have to do the same thing, or you're only going to be fighting 15% of the problem. I'm not saying let's not do anything about it, but if we are to do something about it, we're going to have to get the entire world on the same page. And that means we're going to have to get China to agree. We're going to have to get other. You don't even know what country it is, and they're contributing more than anybody else. The United States is doing its part to ruin the earth, right? Per capita, it's quite large. When you're talking about total emissions, though, China is just winning this competition. Like, they're going to get the #1 prize for who can screw up the environment the fastest. So then you go all the way over to the other side. You get the radical left-wing side now. Professor says eating human flesh will save the planet from climate change. So this is a real story that's coming out of Sweden, and sounds like this guy is a victim of some kind of Stockholm syndrome. But he says these darn conservatives are always being against cannibalism. How dare they? And those that don't want to eat your dead relatives are old fogies who don't want to save the planet. You know, people can be sold on the idea little by little. The more fair way of reading this would be to say human beings would need to make radical changes to their way of life, including their diets. All right, and we already talked about that, so I'm going to leave that right where it is. What do you guys think? Leave me a comment down below. Are you a climate change believer? Have you been saved? Have you been born again into the church of climate crisisology? Or are you a non-believer? Are you a heretic? Are you a sinner in the church of global warming? Let me know in the comments. We'll keep the conversation going. If you like this video, make sure to share it with everybody you know, all of the climate change zealots and all of the deniers, all of the right-wing, alt-right trolls, the neo-fascists, everybody. And don't get brainwashed. Don't get tricked by the rhetoric that you see in magazines such as the Rolling Stone. But I think we could definitely all learn something from Swedish scientist Dr. Magnus Söderlund and, you know, just deep fry some people and get some donations from climate change activists. That's how you get the money.